Hello and welcome to BYJU'S IAS. Before we begin today's analysis, let me wish everyone Ramzan Mubarak as the holy month of Ramzan begins from today. So with this, let's get started with the analysis of today's The Hindu newspaper by looking at an article from the front page of the Delhi edition. On the occasion of the National Panchayati Raj Day, the Prime Minister has said that the biggest message for the country from the COVID-19 pandemic is that India should become self-reliant in all critical domains. The Prime Minister gave out this message while he was addressing sarpanchs from across the country, and during this address, the Prime Minister has launched two major initiatives, which includes a unified digital portal and mobile application known as e-GramSwaraj and a program known as the Swamitva program. But before we talk about these initiatives, first let us understand why the National Panchayati Raj Day is celebrated on the 24th of April. See, in 1992, India took a landmark step towards decentralization by introducing the 73rd Constitutional Amendment and 74th Constitutional Amendment, which provided constitutional status to Panchayati Raj institutions and urban local bodies respectively. The 73rd Constitutional Amendment came into effect on the 24th of April 1993, and in 2010, former Prime Minister Manmohan Singh declared that this day should be celebrated as the National Panchayati Raj Day in order to mark India's transition towards a decentralized democracy. Since then, the Ministry of Panchayati Raj has been celebrating the 24th of April as the National Panchayati Raj Day, and generally on this day, the Prime Minister interacts with sarpanchs of Gram Panchayats from across the country, and awards are given out to the best performing Gram Panchayats in order to recognize their efforts. So while marking the Panchayati Raj Day for this year, the Prime Minister has launched two major initiatives. One is e-GramSwaraj and the other one is the Swamitva program. e-GramSwaraj is a e-governance initiative, and it is a unified digital portal and mobile application that can be used by Gram Panchayats to prepare and execute their respective development plans. Such an e-governance platform will help in improving coordination between all the three tiers of Panchayati Raj institutions, that is the Zilla Panchayat, the Taluk Panchayat and the Gram Panchayat. It will help prepare and implement local development plans, and it will help the state and the central governments to monitor the execution of these projects in real time. It will also help them to hold the grassroots institutions accountable for the execution of these development plans. So overall, this e-governance initiative will help in promoting digitization at the level of Gram Panchayats. Such an e-governance project has been made possible thanks to the high-speed broadband connectivity that has been provided to most of the Gram Panchayats through the National Optic Fiber Network project. This ambitious project was launched in 2011 with the main objective of providing at least 100 Mbps speed broadband connection to around 2.5 lakh Gram Panchayats that are there in the country. In order to implement this ambitious digital connectivity project, a special purpose vehicle known as Bharat Broadband Network Limited was established in 2012 as a public sector unit. And this project has been funded through the Universal Service Obligation Fund. See, the National Telecom Policy of 1999 spoke about the need to create a Universal Service Fund in order to extend telecom and internet services to rural and remote areas. As per this policy, the Universal Service Obligation Fund was established in 2002, and it was given statutory status by amending the Indian Telegraph Act in 2003. This fund falls under the Department of Telecom, and revenue for this fund is raised by the Department of Telecom by imposing a levy on the revenue that is earned by the telecom operators and internet service providers. The money that has been collected under the Universal Service Obligation Fund has been used to fund the National Optic Fiber Network project, which is being implemented by the Bharat Broadband Network Limited. Now let us talk about the Swamitva program. This program provides for the mapping of rural habitations, such as houses and rural land holdings, by using latest survey technologies, including the usage of drones. Such accurate mapping of rural habitations will help in digitizing land records, and it will help in securing property rights for people in the rural areas. It will also help the local administration to streamline planning and rural development. It will also help in increasing revenue collection for the local administration by providing for up-to-date land records. This program will also help farmers and people in the rural areas to leverage their property to gain access to institutional credit. And finally, up-to-date and accurate mapping of rural habitations will also help in settling property disputes. Now let's take up an editorial from page number 6, which evaluates the recent decision of the Supreme Court, through which the Supreme Court has declared that providing 100% reservation for a particular class or a community is unconstitutional. According to the Supreme Court, the provision of 100% reservation for just one community is unconstitutional because it violates the right to equality of other communities. See, Article 14 of the Indian Constitution provides for equality before law and equal protection of the law. Then we have Article 15, which prohibits the state from discriminating against any citizen on the grounds of race, religion, caste, sex, place of birth, etc. But the same article contains a reasonable restriction which says that the state can provide for affirmative action, that is reservation, for communities that are socially oppressed and socially backward and educationally backward, such as the scheduled castes and the scheduled tribes. This provision provides for the upliftment of these socially backward and educationally backward communities by providing reservation. But please remember that neither our founding fathers nor the Constitution contemplates providing 100% reservation to just SCs or to just STs. This is what has been brought up by the Supreme Court while declaring 100% reservation to one community as unconstitutional. See, this case refers to the provision of 100% reservation that was provided by the Andhra Pradesh government for teachers belonging to scheduled tribe in schools that are located in 5th schedule areas. See, under the 5th schedule of the Indian Constitution and Article 244, the President gets to notify an area with predominantly tribal population as a scheduled area, and these scheduled areas will enjoy few special provisions in the form of reservation in employment and education. In schools located in these scheduled areas of Andhra Pradesh, the state government has been trying to provide for 100% reservation for teachers belonging to scheduled tribes since 1986. The rationale behind this decision of the Andhra Pradesh government is that since scheduled areas are remote, teachers from other communities and other areas were not reporting to work regularly, and hence there was chronic absenteeism. While this was a genuine problem, the Andhra Pradesh government decided to resolve this problem by recruiting teachers only from the local tribes by providing 100% reservation to them. This is where the constitutional validity of this policy has been challenged, and rightfully, the Supreme Court has declared such 100% reservation to be unconstitutional because it violates right to equality for other communities. Because see, under Article 371D of the Indian Constitution, a few special provisions have been provided to Andhra Pradesh. Under this article, the President of India has notified that a resident of a particular district or a zone cannot apply for appointment in another district or zone. So upon this, if the Andhra Pradesh government decides to provide for 100% reservation to ST teachers in scheduled areas, then the non-scheduled tribes in these scheduled areas will be in no position to apply for the teaching posts. So that's the reason why the provision of 100% reservation for STs will violate right to equality, and this is what has been brought out by the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court has observed that the genuine problem of chronic absenteeism could have been addressed by providing incentives and not by violating right to equality of other communities by providing 100% reservation to one particular community. This is where we need to recollect a popular statement made by Dr. B.R. Ambedkar during debates that were going on in the Constituent Assembly. See, during these debates on reservation, Dr. Ambedkar was trying to strike a balance between the need to provide affirmative action or reservation and the need to promote open competition and merit. See, generally, those who are critical of reservation and affirmative action, they say that reservation kills merit and competition. But this argument of the critics is not entirely true, and this has been justified by Dr. B.R. Ambedkar during debates that were going on in the Constituent Assembly. Dr. Ambedkar had said that affirmative action loses its meaning if it does not leave the door slightly ajar for open competition. So as you can see, Dr. Ambedkar was trying to strike a balance between the need to provide reservation and the need to promote open competition and merit. Because see, in a country like India, affirmative action is absolutely needed to uplift the socially oppressed and socially backward and educationally backward communities. If these communities, which have been oppressed for centuries together, if they have to be made equal to the other classes, then providing affirmative action or reservation is an absolute must. But at the same time, providing reservation should not close the door for open competition and merit. This statement of Ambedkar makes it very clear that the Constituent Assembly believed in applying reservation only to minority of the seats and never to majority of the seats. Now let's say, for example, there are 100 seats that are available in a school. According to the policy of affirmative action that was envisaged by the Constituent Assembly, a maximum of 50% of the seats can be reserved for communities that are socially oppressed and educationally backward. But at any cost, the rest of the seats has to be kept open in order to promote merit and the spirit of competition. It was on the basis of this argument that the Supreme Court delivered a landmark judgment in the Indira Savni case and placed a 50% cap on reservation. In this judgment, the Supreme Court did provide for few relaxations in case of special circumstances, and these relaxations have been used by few state governments such as Tamil Nadu to provide for more than 50% reservation. But see, the constitutional validity of these cases is an entirely different matter altogether, which is being heard by the Supreme Court. But in regular circumstances, the Indira Savni judgment makes it very clear that reservation cannot exceed 50% at any cost. So this naturally implies that providing 100% reservation to one community is clearly unconstitutional, as it violates right to equality of the other communities. Now let's take up another editorial from page number 6. Recently, Facebook acquired a 9.9% stake in Reliance Jio, which is the digital arm of Reliance Industries, by injecting a massive FDI of around 43,000 crore rupees. This historic deal has been labelled as the largest FDI investment in India's technology sector. This deal is significant for a number of reasons, because it brings together two major companies which enjoy a dominant position in their respective markets. For example, Reliance Jio is the leading telecom and internet service provider in India, and it enjoys the largest subscriber base in the country. Then on the other hand, Facebook owns multiple social media platforms such as Facebook, WhatsApp, Instagram, etc., which enjoy a huge user base in India, and it owns massive amounts of data of Indian users with regard to their preferences and choices, which can be used for targeted advertising and targeted delivery of services. It has been reported that these two market leaders are coming together to disrupt India's retail sector by providing a host of services and products through one super app. According to reports, they are expected to enter India's e-commerce sector through a marketplace known as JioMart. This pits the Facebook and Reliance Jio combined into a direct competition against its rivals such as Amazon and the Walmart-owned Flipkart. They are also expected to come out with a digital payment service of their own in order to compete with market leaders such as Google Pay, Paytm, PhonePe, etc. Apart from this, the super app is expected to provide a host of other services and products, including travel, ticket bookings, etc. So the combination of Jio's subscriber base and Facebook's user data and reach is expected to cause a major disruption in India's retail sector, and this is expected to trigger competition with its immediate rivals, and any such healthy competition is always expected to benefit both the seller and as well as the buyer. India's retail sector, which is still largely unorganized, could very well witness a positive disruption as a result of this mega deal. But however, this deal has also sparked a few regulatory concerns as well. Because in the past, Facebook has had a history of raising regulatory concerns with regard to its initiatives such as free basics, its digital currency Libra, etc. See, a few years ago, Facebook was planning to launch the Free Basics initiative by tying up with internet service providers around the world in order to provide free access to internet, which would provide access to a few applications so that the reach of the internet could be increased. Facebook's argument was that its intention was to promote the availability of internet in remote areas and bring the unconnected population onto the internet. But regulatory agencies, governments and critics were worried that the Free Basics initiative could be misused by Facebook to stifle competition by providing limited access only to its applications, by blocking access to the content of other companies. So as a result of this controversy, Facebook finally decided to drop the Free Basics initiative. Similar regulatory, privacy and security concerns were seen with regard to Facebook's digital currency Libra as well. Now if you look at the mega deal between Facebook and Reliance Jio, it does raise the concern of these companies misusing their dominant position. As we discussed, Jio enjoys the largest subscriber base in India, and Facebook and its various social media platforms enjoy a massive reach with Indians, and they own huge amounts of user data. If this dominant position is misused, it could easily result in the establishment of a monopoly, and this would not only stifle competition, but it would also harm the interests of the seller and as well as the buyer. So that's the reason why the editorial is asking the regulatory agencies such as the Competition Commission of India to carefully track the deal and monitor the activities in order to ensure that this joint venture doesn't end up violating competition laws and doesn't end up monopolizing India's retail sector. Now let's take up a column from page number 6, which evaluates the response of governments and institutions against the COVID-19 pandemic. In this column, the writer illustrates how the global crisis has made global politics take a negative turn and how it has made governments and institutions to become more nationalistic, conservative and inward-looking. As a result of this, we are seeing that governments and institutions are involved in a blame game against each other, and as a result, disputes between them have increased at a time when they should have been building global cooperation and global partnerships. See, we have had the very same discussion multiple times over the last 3 months, so I would request you to kindly go through this column once. Now let's take up an article from page number 8. The chairman of the 15th Finance Commission, Mr. N.K. Singh, has said that there is no proposal as of now to relax the fiscal deficit targets of the central and the state governments by amending the FRBM Act or the Fiscal Responsibility and Budget Management Act. See, first let us quickly understand what is fiscal deficit. Fiscal deficit is nothing but the difference between the total revenue and total expenditure of the government. This basically gives an indication of the total borrowings that the government needs to make in order to balance its budget. So any government will have to keep its fiscal deficit under control in order to reduce its borrowings and keep its loan burden under control. In the case of India, the Fiscal Responsibility and Budget Management Act was introduced in 2003 in order to promote fiscal discipline among the central and the state governments. This legislation basically prescribes a set of fiscal deficit targets for the central and the state governments that has to be achieved within a prescribed deadline. This legislation also provides for an escape clause which can be triggered by the central and the state government, which enables them to breach their fiscal deficit targets during times of disasters, natural calamities, wars, financial crisis, etc. These escape clauses can be triggered by the central or the state governments, and it allows them to breach their fiscal deficit targets and increase government expenditure in order to sustain and revive the economy during times of crisis. Now, due to the COVID-19 pandemic and the impact of the lockdown, the global economy and most of the national economies are coming to a standstill, and hence a number of major countries have decided to come out with a massive stimulus package which calls for increased government spending even at the risk of breaching their fiscal deficit targets. And this approach of these countries has been supported by a number of economic experts as well. Even in the case of India, economic experts have been calling upon the Indian government and the state governments to willingly increase government expenditure without worrying about fiscal deficit targets, considering that we are dealing with an unprecedented crisis. They are calling upon the government to come out with a much larger stimulus package in order to revive the economy, even at the risk of breaching their FRBM targets. And to make this happen, they are asking the governments to trigger their escape clauses. But until now, the government of India has given no indication that it is willing to breach the FRBM targets, and the chairman of the 15th Finance Commission has made it clear that for the time being, India is looking to stay within the FRBM framework. One possible reason for this hesitance on the part of the central government to breach its fiscal deficit targets could be the fact that it had already relaxed the FRBM target during the 2020-21 budget by 0.5 percentage points, and it had increased the fiscal deficit target to 3.5% of India's GDP. So having already relaxed its fiscal deficit targets, the government of India could be hesitant to do it again due to the fear of increasing its burden of borrowing. But the state governments have been asking the centre to relax the FRBM targets by amending the legislation, and a number of state governments are demanding to relax the fiscal deficit targets from the current 3% of state's GDP to at least 4 or 5% of the state's GDP. But such a relaxation would call for an amendment to the FRBM Act. So with regard to this demand from the state governments, the chairman of the 15th Finance Commission has said that states could trigger their own escape clauses instead of relying upon the central government to amend the legislation. Because when the FRBM target was relaxed during the 2020-21 budget, the government of India did not amend the legislation. Instead, it also triggered its escape clause and provided for a relaxation of 0.5 percentage points. So the chairman of the Finance Commission has asked the state governments to trigger their respective escape clauses if required, but he has cautioned them to first evaluate the cost of increased borrowing if they decide to breach their fiscal deficit targets. The concern expressed by Mr. N.K. Singh and the Economic Advisory Council of the Government of India is that if states decide to breach their fiscal deficit targets, then how are they going to finance this deficit? Because there is no guarantee that the bonds that would be issued by the state governments would be able to raise the required finances. But the Finance Commission and the Economic Advisory Council have said that they understand the financial concerns of the state governments that are dealing with the pandemic, and they have asked the states to come out with customized plans because the spread of the pandemic and the economic challenge varies from state to state. Before working out a stimulus, the experts have called upon state governments to take into account the revenue shortfall that they would be incurring due to the lockdown and the economic slowdown. And they have also asked the Government of India to extend maximum support to small enterprises that are facing a cash crunch by providing them additional loan guarantees. Now moving on to the practice questions, we shall be looking at around 15 questions today because there are that many articles in today's paper which refer to important topics that can be relevant for prelims. So let's begin by looking at the first question. Jama Masjid in Delhi was built by Shah Jahan. Option B is the right answer. This question has been asked because as the holy month of Ramzan begins today, the Hindu carries an image on page number 1 depicting the historic Jama Masjid, which was built during Mughal rule by Emperor Shah Jahan. Now let's take up the next practice question. The term R naught, which is frequently in news, refers to the basic reproduction number of a disease, and it indicates the average number of people a patient can directly infect. Option C is the right answer. This question has been asked because we have an article on page number 2 that makes a reference to R naught. See, with regard to infectious diseases, its R naught will determine as to how the disease will spread in the community and how quickly or exponentially the curve is going to increase. See, if the R naught of an infectious disease is less than or equal to 1, it means that each infected person is infecting only one other person or maybe less than that. Then in such cases, the infectious disease can be easily contained and there won't be an epidemic. Instead, the disease will become endemic. But if the R naught of an infectious disease increases to 2 or 3, that's when we are going to witness an exponential increase in the number of cases, as we are witnessing in the case of COVID-19. This article refers to a team of researchers at IIT Delhi who have developed a web-based dashboard for predicting the spread of COVID-19, and it is known as Prakriti. It stands for Prediction and Assessment of Corona Infections and Transmissions in India. This web-based platform has been developed by using the basic reproduction number or R naught of COVID-19 as the key parameter. Now let's take up the next practice question. In 2017, which member country of the Gulf Cooperation Council faced a diplomatic boycott led by the other Arab states? The correct answer is option B, Qatar. See, the members of Gulf Cooperation Council include Sunni powers from the Arabian Peninsula such as Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Bahrain, Qatar, United Arab Emirates and Oman. In 2017, a diplomatic crisis broke out in the Gulf Cooperation Council when Sunni powers led by Saudi Arabia accused Qatar of sponsoring terror and radical groups such as the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt and Al-Qaeda in the region. The Sunni power bloc led by Saudi Arabia even accused Qatar of siding with the Shia power bloc led by Iran and its proxy elements. And Qatar's state broadcasting agency Al Jazeera was also accused of carrying out propaganda against the other Sunni countries. And a number of Muslim countries led by Saudi Arabia had placed a diplomatic boycott on Qatar. This question on Gulf Cooperation Council was asked because we have an article on page number 5 which makes a reference to the GCC. According to this article, the state government of Kerala has requested the Indian Prime Minister to use India's diplomatic influence with the GCC countries to bring back the bodies of Keralites who have died in the Gulf countries due to reasons other than COVID-19. Unfortunately, during this lockdown, a few Keralites have died in the Gulf countries for reasons other than COVID-19, but despite that, it has not been possible to bring back their bodies due to the prevailing lockdown situation. Now let's take up the next practice question. Which of the following statements are correct? The Personal Data Protection Bill 2019 proposes to mandate data fiduciaries to implement security safeguards such as data encryption and preventing misuse of data. The bill sets out certain rights of the data principals and allows them to restrict the disclosure of their personal data by a data fiduciary if it is no longer necessary or consent is withdrawn. Both the statements are correct. Option C is the right answer. See, the objective of the Personal Data Protection Bill that is pending in the Parliament is to protect the data security and data privacy of the data principal and prevent the data of data principal from being exploited or misused by the data fiduciary. According to this proposed law, data principal is one who is contributing data to a company or an institution. It defines data fiduciary as any institution, either public or private, which is involved in collecting, storing, using and processing data that has been obtained from data principals. This proposed legislation accords a set of rights to the data principal and it places a set of obligations on the data fiduciary. This question on the data protection bill was asked because we have an article on page number 5 because it deals with the controversy involving the Kerala government and a popular US-based data analytics firm known as Sprinklr. See, the Kerala government, which has been at the forefront of the fight against the COVID-19 pandemic, has been collecting a lot of patient data, and in order to analyze this data and use it effectively, it entered into an agreement with a US-based data analytics firm known as Sprinklr that is owned by a Keralite. But opposition parties have alleged that this agreement violates privacy and confidentiality of the patients because health-related data of patients is being handed over by the state government to a private firm. The opposition parties have alleged that Sprinklr could exploit this data and sell it off to pharmaceutical companies. This matter finally reached the Kerala High Court and it has passed a judgment giving out a set of directions to both the Kerala government and as well as to Sprinklr. First and foremost, the High Court has asked both the parties to anonymize the data that has been collected. That is to delink the data that has been collected from the identity of the patients. This will ensure that the data cannot be traced back to the identity of the patient. Next, the High Court has directed the Kerala government to obtain the consent of the patients in the first place before the data is shared with Sprinklr. The High Court has also mandated both the parties to ensure that the patient data is not shared with any other third party. And any secondary data or residual data that is left behind should be transferred back to the state government. And the High Court has strictly instructed Sprinklr to not advertise this project, and it has been mandated to use the name of the state government and its emblem. But the Kerala government on its part has defended the deal by stating that the agreement that it has signed with the company has sufficient provisions to prevent the misuse of data. It has also reminded the High Court that the Information Technology Act of 2000 prohibits any company from retaining such confidential data beyond a period of 6 months, and it makes any such violation a punishable offense. So this controversy involving the Kerala government and Sprinklr highlights the urgent need for a data protection law that has been pending in the Parliament from many months. Now let's take up the next practice question. Which organization is responsible for maintaining a satisfactory level of operational stock and buffer stock of food grains in order to fulfill the objectives of National Food Security Act? The correct answer is option B. It is the Food Corporation of India. This question has been asked because according to this article on page number 10, the Food Corporation of India has said that it has sufficient stocks which will last until next March, and it is sufficient to ensure that the FCI fulfills its obligation under the National Food Security Act to maintain operational stock and buffer stock. The current stocks available with the FCI is also sufficient to fulfill the additional provisions that have been made under the Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Yojana. Now let's take up the next practice question. This historic temple located along the Bay of Bengal is dedicated to a form of Lord Vishnu, and it was rebuilt from the 10th century onwards under the Eastern Ganga dynasty. It employs Kalinga architecture and is considered to be a part of the Char Dham. This description refers to the Jagannath temple at Puri in Odisha. Option C is the right answer. See, the popular Char Dham pilgrimage includes 4 historic religious places, including the Jagannath temple at Puri, the Ramnath Swami temple at Rameshwaram, the Dwarkadish temple at Dwarka, and the Badrinath temple in Badrinath. Then within Uttarakhand, you also have the Chota Char Dham Yatra, which includes Yamunotri, Gangotri, Kedarnath and Badrinath. This question on the Jagannath temple has been asked because we have a related article on page number 10. According to this article, the popular RathYatra, which is held every year at the Jagannath Puri temple, might be cancelled as a result of the lockdown and the COVID-19 pandemic. Now let's take up the next practice question. During the COVID-19 pandemic, the Indian Army deployed its rapid response teams to which of the following countries? Is it Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, Oman, Maldives or Kuwait? The correct answer is option D, 4 and 5 only. As of now, the Indian Army has deployed its rapid response teams to Maldives and Kuwait based on a request from these countries. This question has been asked because according to this article on page number 10, the Indian Army has deployed its rapid response teams to Kuwait and Maldives based on the request that was received from these countries. Similar teams of the Army and the Navy have been kept on standby if India receives a similar request from other neighboring countries such as Sri Lanka, Afghanistan, Bangladesh, Nepal, Bhutan, etc. But as of now, India has not deployed its rapid response teams in any other countries apart from Maldives and Kuwait. Now let's take up the next practice question. The Dehing Patkai Elephant Reserve and the headquarters of Northeastern Coalfields is located in which state? The correct answer is option B, Assam. This question has been asked because according to this article on page number 11, the National Board for Wildlife, which is headed by the Prime Minister, has approved a coal mining project of the Northeastern Coalfields that is headquartered in Assam, and this controversial coal mining project falls within the Dehing Patkai Elephant Reserve. Now let's take up the next practice question. Which of the following is considered as Maharashtra's oldest and largest national park or tiger reserve? The correct answer is option A, the Tadoba Andheri Tiger Reserve. This question was asked because on page number 11, the Hindu carries an image of an elephant that has given birth to a male calf at the Tadoba Andheri Tiger Reserve in Maharashtra. Now let's take up the next practice question. In international finance, the term the London Club refers to an informal group of private creditors for restructuring a country's commercial bank debts. Option C is the right answer. See, with regard to international finance, there are 2 clubs that you should be aware of. One is the London Club, the other one is the Paris Club. Both are informal groups that are available to a country that is defaulting on its sovereign debt in order to restructure these loans. The London Club can be called by the country in order to restructure the loans that the country has borrowed from commercial banks, whereas the Paris Club can be called for restructuring loans that has been officially received through bilateral arrangements. This question has been asked because on page number 14, the Hindu carries an interview with Sri Lanka's former Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe. In this interview, Ranil Wickremesinghe makes a case for the SAARC grouping and the SAARC Secretariat to lead South Asia's response against the COVID-19 pandemic. During this interview, he says that a SAARC-based regional approach would be better to restructure sovereign debts of South Asian countries considering the economic impact of the pandemic, because informal groups such as the London Club won't be coming to the assistance of small South Asian countries. Now let's take up the next practice question. United Nations Security Council Resolution 2231 is related to Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action on Iran's nuclear program, or also known as Iran Nuclear Deal. Option D is the right answer. This question has been asked because according to this article on page number 14, United Kingdom has expressed concern at the launch of a missile or a rocket by Iran that we discussed the other day, and the United Kingdom has pointed out that this launch is not consistent with Iran's commitments made under the UNSC Resolution 2231. Now let's look at the next practice question. Which of the following port is considered to be one of China's biggest investments in Europe under the Belt and Road Initiative? The correct answer is option B, the port of Piraeus in Greece. This question has been asked because according to this article on page number 14, Hungary and China have signed a deal for a high-speed rail project that plans to connect Budapest with Belgrade. China plans to extend this rail link to the port of Piraeus located in Greece as a part of its ambitious Belt and Road Initiative. Please look at this map. This is where the port of Piraeus is located in Greece. This strategic port is already owned and operated by a Chinese company known as COSCO. And now China has signed a deal with Hungary to build a high-speed rail link between Budapest and Belgrade, which is located in Serbia. So in the future, China plans to extend this high-speed railway line to connect with the port of Piraeus in order to complete the China-Europe Land-Sea Express route, which is a part of its Belt and Road Initiative. Now let's take up the next practice question. Which of the following minority groups are considered to have become victims of a genocide by the Islamic State? The correct answer is option D, the Yazidis. See, Yazidis are primarily found in Iraq, Syria, and as well as in a few parts of Turkey. This minority community has faced religious persecution at the hands of Islamic State, and this has even been labeled as a genocide. This question was asked because according to this article on page number 14, a German court is dealing with a case involving an Islamic State jihadist who has been accused of committing genocide against the Yazidi minority. Now let's take up another practice question. Which of the following statements are correct? Virunga National Park is located in the Albertine Rift Valley of Democratic Republic of Congo. It is a UNESCO World Heritage Site and is considered to be Africa's oldest and most biologically diverse protected area. There are two active volcanoes located in the park, that is Mount Nyiragongo and Mount Nyamuragira. All the three statements are correct, so option D is the right answer. This question has been asked because this article on page number 14 makes a reference to the Virunga National Park located in DRC, which is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Now let's take up the next practice question. Which of the following statements are correct? Debt funds are a type of mutual funds. Debt funds are usually invested in fixed income securities like bonds and treasury bills. Both the statements are correct. Option C is the right answer. This question has been asked because according to this article on page number 15, India's debt fund sector has come under increased risk after Franklin Templeton closed down around 6 debt funds due to the economic crisis that is currently going on. Now let us take up a practice question from the 2019 prelims paper. Which one of the following suggested that the governor should be an eminent person from outside the state and should be a detached figure without intense political links, or should not have taken part in politics in the recent past? The correct answer is option C, the Sarkaria Commission. Finally, let's take up a couple of mains practice questions. The first question, discuss the initiatives announced by the Prime Minister during the recent Panchayati Raj Day celebrations in 2020. The second question, in a recent case, the Supreme Court has considered providing 100% reservation to a particular class or community as anathema to the constitutional scheme of equality, even it is for the laudable objective of providing representation to historically deprived sections. Evaluate. Kindly write an answer to these questions and post them in the comment section below. So this concludes our discussion for the day. Thanks for watching.